All right, let's jump right in. Today we're breaking down an urgent military order that's just come out for the full evacuation of Gaza City, and we're going to be walking through the latest reporting on this from the Associated Press. So here it is. The Israeli military has ordered a full evacuation of Gaza City. And this isn't just another warning like we've seen before. This feels different. It's a huge development, and it could be signaling a whole new phase in this conflict.
And here's the official word on it, coming right from the AP report. A military spokesperson, Colonel Avichai Adre, actually called the evacuation inevitable. When you hear language like that, inevitable, it really signals that a significant new phase of military operations could be right around the corner.
So that's the order. But it immediately brings up a huge question, right? What does this actually mean for the hundreds of thousands of people living there, the ones on the ground? That's what we're going to unpack, looking at the facts from the report. Okay, first up, let's really dig into the specifics of this order. What exactly does it say, and what makes it so different from the warnings we've heard before?
And this is the key point. We're not talking about another localized warning for a specific neighborhood. The AP report really highlights this as a major escalation. Why? Because it's the first time in this conflict that an order has gone out to evacuate the entire city. That's a huge leap from what we've seen before.
And to understand the scale of this, just look at that number, 1 million. That's the estimated number of people in and around Gaza City. And that figure comes from both the UN and the Israeli military. To put that in perspective, we're talking about an order affecting roughly half the entire population of Gaza. It's just staggering.
So you have to ask, why? Why such a massive order right now? Well, the report gives us a look at the objective, at least as stated by Israeli officials.
And this quote from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu really paints a picture. He's talking about the recent demolitions of high-rise buildings and frames it as just a prelude. He literally says it's only the introduction, only the beginning of the main intensive operation. That language strongly suggests a much larger ground operation is in the works.
So, to back that up, Israeli officials say they've already demolished dozens of these high-rises. The justification given is that Hamas was using them for military infrastructure. Netanyahu called them terror towers. Now, you can see here the exact number is a little fuzzy. Different officials cited in the report give slightly different figures, but we're talking about dozens of buildings.
Okay, so that's the official military objective. But what's actually happening on the ground? How are people responding to this order? The AP report gives us a direct look.
Well, despite the urgency of the warning, it seems the immediate response has been pretty limited. AP reporters who were right there on the scene said they saw some traffic moving south. Yeah, but it wasn't a flood of people. It was nothing close to the kind of mass evacuation you'd expect from an order this big. And this quote from Dr. Rami Mahana, a director at Shifa Hospital, really captures the mood. He told the AP that on the surface, things are as usual, but underneath, he described the atmosphere as tense and filled with great psychological pressure. It really shows you the disconnect between the official order and what people are actually living through minute to minute. So that's the big question, isn't it? If this order has gone out, why aren't we seeing a mass evacuation? Well, as the report points out, it's not that simple. There are some really significant barriers that are stopping people from just up and leaving.
Let's start with money. According to the UN's humanitarian agency, just look at this figure. Over $1,000. That's what it could cost to move a single family south. For so many people there, that's a completely prohibitive amount. It's not really a choice if you can't afford to make it.
But, the cost is really just the tip of the iceberg. The report lays out a truly grim reality for anyone even thinking about fleeing. Where would you go? Displacement sites are already overflowing. There's a severe lack of shelter. Look, over 86,000 tents are just waiting for clearance. Then you have extreme shortages of food and water. The infrastructure is destroyed. And maybe the biggest thing of all, there's just this huge uncertainty about whether it's even safe in the south.
And you don't have to take my word for it. This is the head of the International Committee of the Red Cross, Mirjana Spoljaric. And her assessment is just stark. She stated bluntly that given all those conditions we just talked about, a mass evacuation is impossible to carry out in a safe and dignified way. That's a really powerful statement.
And it's so important to remember the context here. This evacuation order isn't happening in a vacuum. It's being dropped into an already incredibly dire humanitarian crisis. And the numbers in the report, they really paint a stark picture of that human cost. For example, the report cites data directly from Gaza's health ministry on deaths specifically from malnutrition and starvation, and you can see they break it down into two figures.
259 adults have died just since late June of this year, and since the war began back in October 2023, 140 children have died from the same causes.
And zooming out, this is the total number of Palestinian deaths that Gaza's health ministry has reported since the war started last October. Over 64,000.
Now, the ministry's data, as the AP article cites, also breaks this down further. They report that roughly half of those killed were women and children. It's also important to note, as the report does, that these figures don't make a distinction between civilians and combatants.
So when you put it all together, the facts from this report present us with this incredible dilemma. On one hand, you have an urgent military order to evacuate an entire city, and on the other, you have a clear humanitarian assessment that a safe evacuation is basically impossible. And that leaves us with this really profound and unsettling question: when an order is impossible to follow, what comes next?